I'd like to call the Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 meeting of the City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Camacho.
Here.
Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Sanchez.
Here.
Mayor Elias.
Here.
Okay. Let's see, we have council member, let's see, Laura doing the invocation.
Sure.
Stand up.
Our Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you. We ask for forgiveness for our sins. We ask that you look over the children in this world, those that are being abused, those that are being told that they're worthless, those that are being sexually and physically abused. Please let them know that as a community, those on earth and in heaven love them. Tell them that they mean something in this life. Tell them that they're powerful human beings. Give them your love and your grace. We ask that your wisdom be with us as we consider the people's business. We ask that we have respect for one another, that we give each other deference, and that we think the best of one another at all times. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Mayor Pro Tem, can we have this?
Place the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this afternoon we have a study session, capital improvement projects preview.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, tonight we have a presentation on our 5-year capital improvement plan. This is a study session item. This is not set in stone, but we wanted to give you an overview of our 5-year improvement plan. Tonight I have a joint presentation by our Director of Public Works, Monica Heredia, and Angelina Garcia, our Director of Finance, to start.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This afternoon, we wanted to give you a preview of the 5-year capital improvement plan, which will be presented at the upcoming budget meetings in May and June. I'm honored to have worked with the Public Works team, especially Director Heredia, as we develop the financial plans to fund these very necessary projects. So here's just an overview of what we're going to be going over. Obviously, we're going to give you, an overview of the entirety of the 5-year plan. Monica's going to talk about continuing projects and highlight some of the proposed projects. And then obviously we're going to talk about those unfunded or underfunded project needs. Next steps will be just mapping out some dates on the calendar where we can go over these, continue the discussion on the capital. So on the third slide, we just wanted to give you an overview of our planning objectives, what went into developing both the engineering piece and the financial piece. So Monica and her team have been working diligently over the last year and a half to develop master plans or more solid plans that give you the prioritization in terms of years and funding for each of the years. So that is how we will present the numbers here and in subsequent meetings. These projects are strategically selected, planned, and designed, emphasizing practices that prevent deterioration and costly remediation efforts. So again, with the water, sewer, storm drain, streets, the emphasis is what can be done now instead of waiting until something breaks and when it's ultimately more costly. And here is just an overview on slide 4 of the prioritization process and prioritization of products as it lines up with our budget process. Obviously, our end goal is, as we are developing the 2-year budget, that we develop the financial plans for this 5-year piece. When we bring you the budget, the 2-year budget, it will have that focus of the first 2 years capital plans and exactly how much capital outlay they will require, but we will nonetheless present the full 5-year scope of those products. Now, as I mentioned before, Monica's team has been working on all of these master plans. On slide 5, you have the laundry list of all of the great work that the Public Works Department has done to coordinate with us to give us the dollar amounts and the years where we need to plan the finances to be able to get these projects done successfully. Just to highlight a few, and Monica is going to go into them a little bit more in depth. We have the water, wastewater, stormwater, pavement management plan that gives us a prioritization to get to an ultimate PCI or a healthy number for our streets as it's indexed by California agencies, ADA projects, and we have a discussion planned later during other budget meetings to talk about fiber optics. Now, future master plans that are still underway or are recommended to be underway are the facilities and security master plans. I don't want to steal Monica's thunder. So she'll talk more about that. The Intelligent Transportation System Master Plan, I can only say it and not define it. And we have an electric vehicle master plan that's also underway. And now I'll hand it over to Monica so she can talk about the capital plan.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss what I'm most passionate about, construction, and delivering great services to the city by means of preserving the infrastructure and everything that we built in the city for the residents, businesses, and visitors in our city. What you see in this first slide is just a glimpse of what we've been working on. What you see is an image of our GIS system that we're using to coordinate our projects. Right, what you see is a little tag there showing ADA curb ramps. So we're using this tool to determine where we have conflicts, where the projects are located, and that's something that's going to be made available to the public in the near future. We're working on that story map using GIS. But internally, we've been using it a lot to kind of plan and schedule the future work. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a couple of projects that are already started, and there will be more because the last 2 years we've been spending a lot on planning. So as Angelina mentioned, we're trying to come up with a work plan so that for the next 5, 10, 15 years, we have a roadmap showing where the needs are and what needs to be done first. So prioritizing the projects is important, and coordinating to make sure we don't, do something and then 6 months later we're doing something else or we're changing it. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. And this is just a summary of all of the projects that we're working on by category. And along with the slide presentation printouts, you also have this other handout that I believe I've discussed with each of you in the past. And I call this my, it's a document that I continually update, because as we're moving projects from planning to design to construction to close out, my statuses change, and sometimes projects get delayed, sometimes projects move priorities, so they get we finish those sooner. And so it's just an overview of all the projects that we are working on right now, or the engineering team is working on. And I'm very, very happy, very blessed to have the team that I have. They're very motivated, hardworking. I can't ask for a better team. And we're doing, I think we're doing great things. And in the future, you're going to see the labor of our fruits. You're going to see a lot of construction going on. So I'm going to be referencing this as well as the presentation. So, and then please stop me at any time to ask me any questions. Again, we have the categories that we will be presenting. The CIP is going to be bridges, streets, traffic safety, facilities, water, and sewer and storm drain facilities. So again, this is just showing kind of some of our bigger projects or the projects that we've been working on. Some are projects into the future as well. And we are working on an RFP for a facilities management plan, so our list is going to grow even more. So these are just some of the highlights. I'll get into more detail as I go through these categories throughout my presentation. So just a snapshot of what we're doing right now. All of our active projects, we have about 27, and 3 are in the planning stages, 18 are in the design, 7 are under construction. And those are the categories. So the bridge is pretty simple. We have the planning one is in, actually, I have them by category in my presentations. I can go a little bit more specific with each one of these. So under the bridges, we have our continuing projects is the Telegraph Road Bridge over the San Gabriel River. That is a federally funded project. It will replace the existing 4-lane bridge with a new 6-lane bridge. The RFP for design is out and proposals are due May 20th. The design contract will be awarded at the last meeting in June or first meeting in July. The Washington Bridge over the Rio Hondo Channel is also a federally funded project by the Highway Bridge Funds. And we're in the scoping phase to determine the exact width of the bridge that is required for the East Side Transit Corridor Phase 2. That design is supposed to be completed in 2028. And we are coordinating with Metro to obtain funding for the city's match of $3.5 million and the additional cost for a wider bridge. As you know, and you probably see it and have been seeing it for, I think, a year now, the Durfee Avenue underpass is under construction. It's a $108 million project managed by the Alameda Corridor East, or ACE, in the San Gabriel Valley COG. It is scheduled to be completed in June 2022. And then as far as proposed projects, we have the Rosemead Boulevard and Parsons Boulevard underpass repairs. In the photo that you see there, it's what you see is it's a green dye that we use to see where we're trying to determine where the leak or where the seepage is happening. We also have some drainage issues under the Parsons or along the Parsons underpass. So we're monitoring it. We know we don't know the extent of the problem, but we're making sure that we don't have any issues down the line. But it will be something we're looking at. Yeah.
Director, I had a question about the Rosemead underpass. I noticed that it's been, I don't know, maybe about a decade or so. There was these square plates put on that underpass to somehow remedy. Is there a solution that's probably a little better aesthetically, and what is the problem there?
So I don't exactly know, but the reason they put those square things with an anchor is to hold the embankment. So other than redoing the whole underpass, I don't know if you could make it anything more aesthetic, but the high-speed rail, no, I'm sorry. It's a different project. There's a lot of projects going on. I can think of it's not the high-speed rail, or maybe it is. I can't remember right now, but it's, they're going to be widening that bridge over, and so we're hoping, we already made them aware, actually it is the high-speed rail, sorry, that there's a problem there, and that they should take care of it as they are designing or widening that the tracks and that is going through there. So, but you never know, something can come up before that project gets constructed, and that's also in a long-term project. So it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and so our next category is our street projects, and so our main two focuses right now is the asphalt rubber aggregate membrane, or ARAM, and chip seal pavement program on residential streets, and the overlay and reconstruction pavement program in residential streets. Those are the COP-funded projects, and which are currently under design. We are going to be addressing 89 street segments and 8 alleys. And they were selected and prioritized by the recent completion of the pavement management program system, which I will be bringing back to council next month for a more detailed discussion. I hope I don't put you to sleep. Then the third bullet item is the Rosemead pavement project from Whittier to Gallatin, which is currently out to bid. The bid opening is on May 19th, and construction, or the award of that project is scheduled for the June 8th council meeting, assuming bids are good. We have rejected bids before, so yes.
On the Whittier Boulevard landscape medians, has the city considered putting palm trees like our neighbor cities?
So we have a median landscape master plan, and we're following what was adopted by the council as part of that.
What year was that adopted?
I want to say like 2 years ago.
Can we revisit that now that we have a new council?
We can, except that project is already, we have finished the design already. We're actually waiting approval from Caltrans to move forward with the overlay portion of that project.
I wanted to get the feedback of the rest of the council, how they feel about our neighboring cities. They utilize a lot of palm trees, and aesthetically it looks really nice. And I would love to see our city follow suit. Is there opinion on the rest of the council on that?
Basically, my understanding is that it's already in the design, so we wouldn't have any say. It's already been moving forward, correct?
It's already been designed, yes. And we followed the master plan that was completed about 2 years ago. So whatever was decided then, that's what we're following. I can maybe forward that study to all of you so you can take a look at it. It's actually, I think it's a nice, they have good recommendations for drought-tolerant planting, and it has a different schematic for each of the corridors. So it doesn't look all the same. We want a little bit of variety. So, yes.
I think it's a good suggestion. After we did the Beverly Road median improvements, we added some palm trees. Since then, the emergency drought, California drought came to be, and the new standards came about that guided us in creating the beautification median plan project, which is, 2 templates that were created. One was one theme or themes throughout Boulevard. So the vegetation and all the plants were taken into consideration. The fact that we can no longer water our medians, if you will. So trying to create what is the best suitable way to do a drop system, drip system, or other ways of capturing that water. So that kind of was the guidelines that we used under the circumstances, hence the master plan on that.
Member Lara?
Thank you. I've read that report on the median master plan. I'm a big proponent on improving our medians. I'm a little disappointed with the Beverly Boulevard medians. I drive by there every morning after I drop my boy off from school, and I look at those medians, and they're just shot. And I get a little frustrated because, they looked really nice at the beginning. And the thing about that is they have recycled water infrastructure, so we can water them. But I think the problem when I talk to maintenance staff is that the design was too intricate. Like there were these little areas of grass and all these different types of different, it was beautiful in design. And when they initially planted that stuff, but they didn't the maintenance is really tedious and difficult, and I don't think we have that. So, I wouldn't mind looking at the plan again. Just because the design has been designed, it's something we could look at again, because we don't have money allocated for a lot of these medians, because there's something like $10 million. And we haven't allocated any of that money yet, right?
Well, except for this project.
Except for this one. So the vast majority of medians have yet still to be actually
Correct.
funded. So we could go back and look at that plan. I drive on the other portion of Beverly, and I guess passing the 605 freeway, They just installed medians, and it's simple. It's simple. Some shrubs and some nice little trees. And it's like, God, we don't need like birds of paradise and little areas of grass. Like, it's great, but when it comes to maintenance and what is that going to look like 5-10 years down the road? If you want to look at those, Beverly Boulevard medians, we don't even respect it because we have an orange sign in the middle of the median where there should be foliage. It's an orange sign, I don't know, directing people for traffic or something, but it's like, that should be, anyway, I'm going off. I care about medians, sorry.
The concern I have is just because we've just moved forward and we did a great job on Telegraph. I know that was a joint project. It doesn't have to be as intricate, but boy, what makes it really nice are those palm trees. And those are not high-end palm trees, those are middle grade. And if we can follow suit with the rest of Telegraph and then incorporate that on Rosemead and Whittier Boulevard and have a theme, every city has a theme whenever they re-landscape their medians. I just see this as an opportunity right now to take advantage of following suit with that theme that we've already established on Telegraph. And that'd be great if we can revisit that master plan that you said was adopted 2 years ago. And possibly, to me, everything can be modified. And it's in the best interest of the city and the residents and the morale. And of course, whenever we do a project, we always should take pride in it. And as Councilmember Lara said, 5-10 years from now, how will it look? If you have simple grass and queen palms, that's going to last.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, we definitely will bring that back. The Whittier Boulevard project, as you know, is well underway, but some of the other areas we can definitely bring back and have a second look. I think part of the issues that I think that council member mentioned is dealing with the directives with the state on drought. As you know, that may be returning again, so I'm sure those things will be factored in our discussion as well, but we will definitely bring something back to council.
One of the concerns that I have is that when you take a look at what the mission is for the Planning Commission, it's exactly this particular area here. So they're supposed to serve as an advisory group to the council. So I would like to get their take on this. I would like to be able to have them review this and then bring their recommendations to the council, as they should.
Yeah, I want to say that they probably did when the master plans or the median referred.
They approve this?
I don't know if it went to planning, but I know often we coordinate these type of master plans with different departments.
Yeah, we will make sure in the future that we get buy-in from the
Well,
different.
not in the future. With this item also, okay, we need we need their input, okay?
I'm talking about this being in the future.
Okay,
Yes.
This is the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Future is tomorrow.
Oh, okay, so back to my slide here on Telegraph Road Safety Enhancement Project. Yes, we're excited that actually started this week, and that's Downey is the lead agency. We've been working together to continue that theme along Telegraph, because the beans there do look beautiful.
That's great.
And so that should be completed by the end of this year. And then the Mines Avenue Bike Lane and Pedestrian Bridge over the San Gabriel River is under design as well. We are going through some right-of-way clearances, and we'll be bringing an item to council for approval to amend the design contract to address with these right-of-way issues or items and provide a more detailed update on the project to City Council. Oh, wait, as far as those projects, every year we do sidewalk improvements, signing and striping. We allocate a small amount. It's probably not enough, but our backlog is extensive, but it's better than doing nothing. And We're also proposing the Olympic Way improvements in that kind of big space along Olympic Way from Beverly Road to Olympic Boulevard to beautify that area.
I have a question
Yeah.
regarding the streets. You said 89 streets were proposed for repair. Let's say for instance, I've received messages from residents regarding smaller streets. For instance, Dam Bridge near Rivera Middle School, Clarinda on the south side of Pico Rivera. What would be the case that they're requesting a repair, but it's not currently in our plan immediately? Would there just be a minor repair, basic patching, or what is the case?
Yeah, I can go into more detail on that when we present the payment management system, but yeah, that's all we could do in the meantime. Or we can do other preventive measures for the entire road segment so that we preserve the pavement as much as possible.
And then Monica, if I can add something, in addition to the larger scaled projects that exceed 50,000 that are more routine, there's a separate maintenance budget that you will see as part of the operating budget. That is where we will program some of these minor
Yeah, our
improvements from.
Right, our staff at the yard, actually, there's a crew and they do that on a daily basis. But it's, throughout the city, our payment is not, it's borderline fair or good or poor. So, yeah, and again, I like to go into more details when we present that item.
And just to add one thing to distinguish between capital projects and the normal recurring, we do have kind of, just a few rules that we follow internally in designing these. So one is that it has to substantially increase the useful life of the asset. And so the normal patching doesn't really fall into that category. And it's a price tag of, let's say, over $50,000. So that's kind of just the boiler point. Or just like the simple rules that we follow, that Public Works follows in developing these plans. So to answer your question, if there is a request, then maybe the maintenance team will evaluate that request and the improvement of that patchwork or, just normal wear and tear items versus a more comprehensive project.
Member Camacho?
Yes, on the sidewalk improvements, I know we fix sidewalks throughout, whether it be damaged by trees or whatnot. But or do we have any projects that actually are adding sidewalks? I know there's quite a lot of areas in our city that do not have sidewalks. I think the most recent addition of sidewalks, I want to say, is probably 2-3 years ago over, I forgot the name of the street, but it's by Friendship over on the north side. They added sidewalks. And what comes to mind is the stretch between on Olympic Road between Paramount and Rosemead. On the south side, there are no sidewalks, so people are walking on the street in cars. So I know that we have quite a few areas in the city. Does that include any addition of sidewalks?
It does. I believe, I'm not sure if this one's on our backlog, but again, we have a very limited 100,000. We've been able to add some of that in the last year. I think our last one was 330,000. So it's just, we have a lot of demand or a lot of areas that need extensive repair. And so I can check to see where that is.
Understood.
I know it's not in the current.
So these are more improvements, that's you specify, no additions.
Right, yeah. And we have added a couple of segments here and there depending on, there's other issues besides where, the fact that there's no sidewalk. Maybe there's, I remember we added sidewalk on, I can't remember the street where trucks were making that turn and, so we'll do things like that as part of the program. Okay. Oops, that wasn't the right one. So as far as the traffic safety, we have the Rosemead and Beverly intersection improvements, which is the final project related to the Hotspots program funded by Measure R. This $13.5 million project is finally under construction, as you have noticed. Notice delays at that intersection, and it's slated to be completed by the end of this year. And then we have Highway Safety Improvement Program, Cycle 7 and 8. We will be addressing 19 intersections along 5 corridors to reduce collisions, increase safety by installing signal hardware and pedestrian down heads. And this, the Cycle 7 is out to bid right now, and the bid opening is on May 20th. Cycle 8 will be out to bid very soon, and that will also address signal hardware improvements at 3 locations and signal mast arms at 2 locations. So the traffic signal synchronization program, TSSP, along Slauson Avenue, Washington, and Beverly Boulevards are projects that we're coordinating with the LA County Department of Public Works. They're doing the design, and we are asking for, as part of this CIP program, matching funds so that when they're in construction, we have those. And if you look at your, in this sheet here, under traffic safety enhancements, you have all of those listed there in their schedule and their estimated cost of the project and their, where they are. So those are the ones I just mentioned. And as far as future projects, we have an advanced traffic management system or a traffic management operations center that we would love to implement. That photo on the slide there kind of shows a camera that is showing the condition of the road, where it's at, and if there's any backup. Having some system like this would help us manipulate and make adjustments to the signals during construction or traffic collisions that create backups. So we can do that from a remote place like City Hall or the yard if a traffic management operations center was implemented. And of course, the installation of fiber optics would be required for.
Member Lar?
Yeah, setting aside the cost of the fiber optic cable, what would the cost of the Advanced Traffic Management System Operations Center be?
1.5 million.
Okay, is that like a one-time fee, or what's the maintenance and? If you don't know, that's okay. You don't have to go, the 1.5 million
Yeah,
is
no,
started out.
I have it, but in another, I didn't bring my notes for
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah,
That's okay, okay.
there is some cost too, of course.
Okay.
It's an ongoing maintenance and staff as well.
Okay,
I believe I presented that last year, but I can make sure to include that in the next presentation.
Director, and that also includes the ability to record?
Yes. Right, because you have cameras and you can see you can see what is going on right at that moment as well. So. And as far as parks and facilities, we have an item tonight to approve a professional services agreement for the design of the City Hall ADA improvements. And it is estimated that $850,000 will be needed for project implementation, but I believe tonight is just the design. We are also working on the teen center renovation for youth center. Additional funds will be needed as well to address the extensive damage to this facility. And you can see the photos that I posted there. On the left, it shows the interior water damage that we're dealing with. And on the right is some plumbing issues that were addressed at the senior center restrooms last year, which was a temporary fix, but that's another reason to do this facilities management master plan to see where all these improvements need to happen at all of our facilities.
Director, I have another question. I guess because this is my wheelhouse, I guess. Does City Hall and does the senior center have a backup generator?
City Hall does. The senior center, I'm not sure.
Is it?
We're working on we have one for the water plant, and we're working one for the city yard.
Okay. Thank you.
So same, we're coordinating the senior center ADA improvements with park staff. It's a CDBG funded project. Advertisement for this project will start next month. And as I just mentioned, we have a city-yard generator. We'll be releasing an RFP for that next month. As well as the facilities management plan and security systems master plan. We're working on the RFP, so the goal is to get it out by next month. Okay, and as far as water projects, as you know, we are digitally working on the PFAS treatment system. We're at 65% plans, specs, and specifications for plants 1 and 2. And we're actually have an RFP out to procure the cartridge filter housing units for the vessels. And we're also in the process of securing WRD funds and additional funding from the community project funding request.
And then also, Monica, if I can add one more thing on the water, since it does segue into one of the items that we have for tonight, which will be the water rate study. The projects that you see identified under the water projects, new or continuing and proposed, are contingent upon us, making the rate changes that are included in today's packet. So absent those rate increases, we would have to strategize as to how we're going to get those projects funded.
Thank you. Yes, and also tonight, as part of the regular council meeting, we have an item to appropriate additional funds for a water main replacement project. And we're working on another well improvements as well, which is another project that is currently out to bid that we needed to prioritize or work on because of the PFAS treatment system. And if you recall, at the last council meeting, you approved a construction contract for the electrical panel improvements at Plant 3 as well. And so we expect that to be completed at the end of this year. So a lot of our efforts this year have been with water projects and our water facilities.
Member Lutz?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I want to highlight here, I'm looking at the capital improvements program, the master schedule, and it looks like that this PFOA and PFOS treatment facilities will be completed by June of 2022. Is that correct?
That's what we're trying, that's our goal.
I just want to pat everybody on the back and say congratulations, because you guys are fantastic for taking the bull by the horns and having this project completed. So Mr. City Manager and the rest of the staff, as well as you, Director, for doing this in such a short period of time and attacking it the way you have. I really do appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I'm sure the residents, once they hear that these filtration systems will be in working order by the mid-June, they're going to be very happy with your performance.
Thank you so much. Yeah, again, this is something that, last year just came out of the blues, and we had to shift all of our priorities, and we know how important this is, and we certainly don't want our wells to be shut down and have to pay expensive imported water. And it is a regional problem, so, and we are spearheading, we will be, I believe, the first city to have treatment facilities in place. But we are seeking federal funds, so that may delay the project slightly, but we're doing everything we can to move it along. That's why we have kind of phased this project. We did the design, we did the procurement of the vessels, we're going to do this other long lead item. So we're trying to move as fast as possible. So
That's what you call a win for Pico Rivera.
thank you. I will pass that down to my team. They work very hard.
Member Camacho?
A quick question, slipped my mind. Going to the previous slide on the security system, it was brought to my attention that we've had several break-ins at the Public Works yard. Continued break-ins. I think that needs to be remedied quickly. What are we doing?
We are. So what happened was the alarm system, that whenever someone I guess, tried to break in, was damaged. So recently, our public works staff at the yard have been digging for a new wire, so we're working on it. So hopefully we'll have that up and running pretty soon.
Is this an internal fix, or are we
Yeah,
bringing some?
We're fixing it in-house, we're providing the conduit, and then we have our alarm system company that's going to install the conduit or whatever it is, so that, when
So it's the-
someone tries to break in, the alarm will go off. Right now, we don't have an alarm.
So it's alarm and the camera systems, though? I think the camera systems are,
They're pretty outdated, so we will be upgrading those as well, but
we got a lot of expensive equipment in there. What can we do to remedy this? I think this is a priority.
as I mentioned, we're working on it right away. So we do have, we're working with with SSD to get that remedied as soon as possible.
We'd love to have an update, sooner or later as to what we're doing there.
Yeah.
I think we've had, like, if I'm not mistaken,
had
about
three.
three or four within
Yeah.
the last couple of months. And they've
Yes.
stolen some pretty expensive equipment from what I
Right,
gather.
and that's the reason we want to have this, but not just for this ER, just throughout all of our facilities and
Thank you.
works. Okay, so we talked about water. And then our final one, we're almost at the end here. As Angelina mentioned, we worked very hard to work on our master plans, and so you see all the water projects that we're working on and future ones that we need to work on, and they have been prioritized, and that's the water rate study. And so the same thing for for sewer and storm drains. We have initially just very little minor projects, but we need to expand on those as well. We have 112 miles of sewer main lines and 3 lift stations as part of the sewer system. The master plan identified 26 projects totaling $8.5 million in capital improvement projects to improve the condition of the sewer system. There is 34.2 miles of storm drain lines, 491 manholes, 8 lift stations, and 804 catch basins. We are responsible to maintain 254 of the catch basins as well as the lift stations. And the master plan identified 32 projects totaling $34 million in capital projects to improve the condition of the storm drain system. And so the continuing projects is just, and you see the pictures there of some storm drain lining. We have some drains that have collapsed, and so we're trying to, again, mitigate those and trying to come up with a strategy to address these issues using Measure W, now that we have a little bit of funds, but that's not, we get 900,000 and we have a need of 34 million. And as far as proposed projects, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the Bertola storm drain improvements. That's a major project. So we'd like to use Measure W funds that are available now to move forward with that project, as well as catch basin inserts that helps us with our NPDES compliance program. And again, looking at our lift station, some upgrades to them. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions at this time?
Director, which plan did we go with when we had the last study session on the sewer and storm drain recommendations from the one company that told us we have option A, B, and C, C being the most costly, A being the most economical, and B being a blend?
I'll let Helena answer that.
Yes, thank you for the question, council member. So the two are structured differently. The sewer, we have an opportunity to explore more liberal option in terms of funding sources for that, and took into consideration the capacity that Public Works had to actually do those projects, because it's not only, let's say that the total identified was a 34 million that Director Heredia pointed out. If we just had the capacity for 10 million, then that's all we can fund for. And if we choose to go through a Prop 218 assessment fee, things of that nature, it has to be with a more substantiated, solidified, realistic budget. So we went with scenario 3 for the wastewater sewer. For the storm drain, because we had the opportunity to also count on $900,000 annually of Measure W, that was more of an option 1 all in, but we still need to identify a funding source to pay for the storm drain needs that are necessary. And so option 1 is the more practical one, because we would be able to maximize the use of the Measure W funds. If we go with a more diluted option, we'd have Measure W funds just sitting there unappropriated. So that's a strategy that we took in building this first 5-year outlook for these 2 items.
Okay.
So now
Mr.
going
City
into,
Manager?
I'm,
Excuse me. Is there a way that we would be able to put our storm drain into the COVID-19 funding situation, since we did have a financial impact and we could not take action on it?
Yeah, we'll definitely have a future discussion on using our ARP funds, and if council wants to allocate it to this particular use, that is definitely an eligible expense that we can do.
But is there additional, source that we can?
Yeah, there is actually some infrastructure money out there that we can pursue. Later on at the council, we're going to give you an overview of some of the funds that we've been seeking from the federal and state government.
I apologize. So now into the funding plan, what we used and how we developed this $177 million 5-year capital plan. Obviously, we're going to talk about some unfunded needs, and just like we mentioned, the sewer and storm drain, because we don't have a fee assessment for the sewer that is considered unfunded. We don't have a dedicated funding source for the sewer as of this date. In addition, just trying to time, Monica, feel free to jump in, trying to time each of these projects. We know that the water, PFAS is a priority, and the streets, the PCI index, and getting them up to a more favorable PCI index. Those took priority in funding, and knowing that there is a dedicated funding source that we can tap into to develop the 5-year plan funding strategy. Once we made full use of every single dollar we had on hand, we identified about $11 million in unfunded needs that we still need to find a dedicated funding source, right? So that's where, unrestricted funds, operating funds would go to. As you know, May 11th, we'll be bringing you a study session on the operating budget. As you know, over the course of the last 6 months, we've been trying to eliminate a $2 to $3 million structural deficit. So all of those things, come together as we're trying to build all these plans. So at this time right now, and knowing that we still have a little work to do with trying to line up these projects, we have about $11 million of unfunded needs that we have. Okay.
May 11th will be a study session?
May 11th will be a study session like this one, yeah. And so, another very important, very positive note to bring up is almost more than one third of all of the projects are funded by grants. And that is a big, I don't know, Monica, I would doubt this, as a public works director, because very few cities account on that much or are awarded that much. And so Monica has a brilliant team that goes after every single dollar to make, the best use of all of our funding. And there's big projects. I mean, you have 4 or 5 bridge projects that they work hard to seek additional funding from the federal, from the state, from Caltrans, to be able to fund these projects. Second to that is the water fund projects. Obviously, again, we're going to continue that conversation this evening, talking about the rate structure and what rate changes are needed in order to adequately fund these projects. As Monica mentioned, most of the pavement management projects that have been identified through a big plan, a master plan, if you will. I know Monica puts another title on it, but in my little mind, to keep them all sorted out, it's a pavement management plan that identifies, a $20 million funding requirement per year to get our streets indexed at 84, 85 PCI. Knowing that we don't have that, knowing that we don't have a dedicated funding source to support whatever the metro funds can't fund, we do have an opportunity to use our certificates of participation. Right now, we have been authorized in prior years to issue as much as $30 million in bonds and certificates of participation to fund for these residential street rehab projects. We have issued $15 million in bonds, and we will be seeking a second tranche of another $15 million to issue again. This was a previously approved council approved for us to issue up to $30 million in certificates of participation to fund these projects. So at this time, and just looking at her structure, it looks like we are going to have future discussions to ask council to authorize the second tranche of $15 million. We are allocated each year from LA County Metro, about $4 to $5 million in Measure M, Measure R, Prop C mainly to fund, local street projects. And so that funds $20 million over the next 5 years. And you can see some of the other funding categories that I won't go too much in depth on. But if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is amazing. So the Director Heredia, you said we have 27 projects currently in planning, design, and construction total. In your experience or city manager's experience, is that really good, average, or a huge task to undertake?
I would say above average.
Way above average.
Especially for the city our size.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you. And I know you might have a list, but I think we should promote that, just a list of all of our improvement project grants, the agencies, and the dollar amount to show that we are utilizing these funds and bringing these funds in to, basically that's free money for Pico Rivera that's not coming out of our general fund, right, to improve our streets.
Absolutely.
So I want to see that list and promote it to the world.
That will be definitely included as part of the 5-year capital improvement plan budget document.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, we are working on that as we speak, and we'll have something to highlight probably coming in June.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add a comment in regards, thank you, Mayor. And basically, as you mentioned, 1/3 are grant funds and funding. That is a testament of the staff and the city as to we're reaching out. I remember several years back, I heard somebody say, we need to stop getting grants. And I'm like, no, that's a good problem to have. Of course, we got to meet those grant obligations and so forth, but nonetheless, to be able to have these grants and see these projects that take years in making, and to see a lot of them are finally come to fruition, where the community get to see a lot of these physical projects that are going to improve the city is great. But again, testament to staff and what you've done, brought forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember. And as I mentioned later on at a city council meeting, a regular city council meeting, we're actually seeking even more money, a significant amount of money to hopefully help us with our other infrastructure needs and impacts that we have as a result of Whittier Narrows Dam project.
Councilman?
I had the opportunity of walking the sports arena and kind of going into every bathroom and checking the plumbing and literally. What type of capital improvement projects do we have slated for any type of improvement on that area?
None at this time.
And it's my understanding that the money that the contractors were paying us to lease that facility out, that money was supposed to go back into the infrastructure of that place.
I don't think.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So hypothetically, we've been taking money and we've been failing to improve the infrastructure.
So some of the money, contractually, the operator has certain responsibilities to do. I have to get really into the details of that contract, but, part of the challenge is dealing with the Army Corps and what they allow us to do. And so working through some of those loopholes have been very challenging.
Okay. So part of the discussion, just my 2 cents on Whittier Narrows Dam, since we have an open dialogue with the Army Corps, I think we need to really push improvements, because I know there had been improvements slated in the past. There was talks about bringing the Olympic, equestrian, and there were projections, there were models made, because what they need over that, and sorry if I'm going too far off field, but I'll wrap this up. They need like a dome, they need a covering so that they can operate year round, because it's weather permitting. And that constricts how they're able to operate and have festivities there in the middle of December. They can't plan that because they don't know what the weather is going to be like. So if they created some sort of covering, it would make them more profitable and it would make us more profitable. So anyway, I just wanted to know what type of CIP projects we had slated for that. You answered that. Thank you.
And Mayor, if I could just quickly add, and the 2028 Question Olympics, I think it's still, in my opinion, viable, and we should continue trying to make a coordinated pitch to the players at B, which will bring investment into that sport arena to a whole different level.
Just to touch on Mayor Pro Tem's statement here, other cities right now are taking their capital improvements, infrastructure programs, and selling it to the public that this is their economic recovery plan. And I think it makes all the sense in the world that we package everything as part of the economic recovery plan. So they do see that we're working in that direction. Because again, this is going to create jobs, this is going to, just generate it, and we should sell it as that.
Yes, underway as council, as soon as they approve it, it's something that we can market to the community.
In the future?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
No.
Okay, Dr. Sanchez, this is just a short list of some of the grant-funded projects that we have, but obviously the document that we would be putting out to the community would be just very itemized and to the dollar. Now, when we talk about the 11 million that was in the pie in the previous slides, and you try to tie it to this, there's a little bit of 11 million, 89 million. So again, the 11 million was the identified funding shortages for those 5 years, right? For the 5 years of the capital improvement plan that we're building. In addition to that, this has a longer tail. This goes out at least 15 years. But Monica, through the master plans and through the pavement management studies, she's able to identify close to $90 million in additional needs that right now are just, we're not able to realize them with the special funding sources that we have, and most importantly, with the operating general fund budget that we have.
And I just want to point out to the second sheet on this handout where I have a list of actually all of the or deficiencies or projects that, and it's part of this list as well. So this is not an a comprehensive list, and I just keep adding them to the different categories, but this gives you another summary of all the identified projects as a result of the master plans. And of course, the ones that are not there yet, which are the facilities management, master plan, and security system, as well as the electrical vehicle system.
So that's
And
what you
other
see under,
plans.
yeah, that's what you see under TBD to be looked at in the future. And just as a reminder, as we brought forward the budget calendar and this emphasis on a 2-year budget, this is exactly why, the city manager and the team has proposed going to a 2-year budget. We build in the operating budget 2 years in advance. We plan for it. But in the second year, next year at this time, it will be a more focused approach on the capital plan and refining it and being able to tap into possible funding sources to go after. We're building the 5-year right now with the needs that we have right now, and most importantly, because we have the prioritization of projects already given to us through these valuable master plans. And right now that we have the opportunity to, for Prop 218 measures and fees that are more, cost neutral, we're able to plan out and prioritize and maximize all of the projects that the city needs. So that concludes our presentation, and we welcome any other questions you might have.
Let's take a break. We'll return at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we have two proclamations. Our first proclamation is Municipal Clerks Week, May 2nd to the 8th. I would like to read the proclamation and then have Ms. Jerome come up and pick it forth, okay? Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of the local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of municipal clerk provides professional link between citizens and local governing bodies and agencies of the government at other levels, and whereas the municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality, impartiality, and rendering equal service to all. Whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings of their state, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is appropriate at this time to recognize the accomplishment, hard work, and dedication to the office of the municipal clerk of the city of Pico Rivera. Now, therefore, to be resolved that the mayor and the city council and the city of Pico Rivera on the 27th day of April, 2021, do hereby proclaim May 2nd through May 8th, 2021 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation for our professional municipal clerk, Anna Jerome, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Ms. Jerome, can you please come pick up your... Council members, can you please... You have to push her. Yay. Thank you. Can you push your seat here so that we can... Can you go? Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, team.
Please, yeah. Please keep your chairs there. We have another one right here. The city of Pico Rivera, Earth Day climate emergency. Whereas the United Nations released a special report which projected that limiting warming to prevent the dangerous 1.5 centigrade target this century will require an unprecedented transformation of every sector of the economy of 2030. Okay. As part of this declaration, Pico Rivera is committed to taking the following climate actions. Commit to mandatory climate and environmental literacy training for 100% of City of Pico Rivera staff. Commit to lowering Pico Rivera's carbon emissions in half by 2035 and net zero emissions by 2050. Committed to integrating climate and environmental justice into community decision-making. Mr. City Manager, can you please pick up your proclamation?
This is a good sign that we're getting back to a little normal, actually, a presentation.
Don't switch.
No, man. I think they're all bad.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any changes to today's agenda?
None, Mayor.
Okay. Then I will proceed with public comments. Public comments received written communications from the following. Jose Sanchez regarding Rosemead Boulevard Trench botched repair, southbound lanes. Andrew Gutierrez regarding action taken on no vote of confidence, supports mobile home rent control. Ms. Aguilar and Ms. Amalia Rojo support mobile home rent control. The Montebello Pico Rivera Democrats introducing their organization. And Steve Hernandez commented on item number 13, recommending the postponing taking the action. Emails containing the written communications were provided to all city council members. Okay, on the agenda, we have our consent calendar. Council members? Is there anything that that you want us to pull for discussion?
Mayor, item number 8 in regards to the Veterans and Ladies Auxiliary Park renovation notice of completion, I would just like to make a comment on that item. That item, when we were there, some of the residents complained about the,
Well, hold on.
yes, sir.
You're making a comment on it?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Should I pull it?
No, we need to record it.
Okay. So with that,
Well,
there's,
let's
okay,
determine what.
sure, yes.
Councilman? No, good?
Nothing.
None.
Okay. Let's see,
I do additionally have a question related to the veterans, I don't want to
The
pull
same?
it. I'm going to vote yes, but I just have a question.
okay. All right. So on those that, is number 13 on the regular agenda or consent?
Regular, right.
What's a regular? Okay, so we don't, all right. Okay, so let's approve those that have not been pulled.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve those items, excluding item number 8.
Excluding number, do
I'll
I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have a vote?
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes, but I want to, for the record, I'm voting no on number 11.
Is number 11 in the consent calendar?
No.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Councilmember Laura?
Yes, I'm voting yes on all the items, except for number 8, because we pulled that.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Council member, you can begin.
Yeah, thank you. In regards to item number 8, when we were there, and when you just look at the way that the playground, and I want to thank staff in terms of when they did the renovations, they took into account that street. That's like just literally right there. Cars go by really fast. I think this would be an appropriate place to put 2 speed bumps. Because you have kids playing right there. There's no sidewalk, nothing like that.
We're actually working on that.
Thank you.
And so should be installing those pretty soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
My question is, I noticed in some of the notes that there was about $1,000 remaining from the CDBG funds. So what is going to be done with that? Is it going to be used for the fence or something else, or do we have to give that back? Where does that go?
Say it again.
There was approximately a little more than $1,000 left in
Yes.
in the budget for
Yes.
this Veterans Park item
That is correct.
of CDBG funds. So what is going to happen with that money? Reallocated to another
Yeah, it
project?
goes back into the pool and we'll use it for a future project.
And similarly, the unencumbered CDBG fund items, is there a deadline that we have to use those funds?
We do have to spend it. They like to see us spend some of the money. Sometimes project gets pushed over, but we try and do our best to spend it in that funding cycle in the fiscal year.
With June 30th, by June 30th?
Yes, that is correct.
So perhaps this is something that the fence with the Veterans Park that we could address.
Yeah, we'll take a look into that.
I think also additionally, that area is a lot of concrete and shading can be an issue, so be a little cooling station with shade, and I've seen little misters that let out air. So something to consider to help with cooling in this, because primarily concrete, there's not a lot of park, grass, it's not necessarily a grassy area. But if we do have that, if we do have the funds there, I think we should utilize that grant.
Okay, we will definitely look into that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Completed discussion on that item?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to pass?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to pass item number 8.
I'll second, yeah.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now to our regular agenda.
Mayor,
Excuse me?
The
we
public
need to do item number 1, the public hearing?
Item number 1?
Yes. 1.
One.
Oh, the public hearing. Yes, okay. Oh. Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, item number 1 is the consideration of the public hearing for fiscal year 2021 through 22 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Annual Action Plan approval. It's appropriate for the mayor for you to open the public hearing at this time. And if there's any written or verbal communications, have there been any requests to speak? There has been none. There's no one else in the audience that wishes to address this item. Steve, do you need a staff report or not?
No.
No. Then, Mr. Mayor, it's appropriate to close the public hearing at this time.
Okay. Now, we have the City Council Water Authority also?
No, this is going back to item number 1, which is the public hearing.
Okay.
So, Mayor, if you'll close the public hearing,
Oh, do I have a,
you can close it yourself. Just close the public hearing.
okay, I can close it.
And then it goes up to the council for consideration of approval.
Move as recommended?
I make a second. Oh, I'm sorry. That was, you were this, okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes?
Motion carries.
Now we go to item
13.
Item 13, sorry. Item 13, which is back to regular agenda.
Thank you. Authorization approving the issuance of pension obligation bonds and authorization to file validation action. Mr. City Manager, can you read the recommendation?
Yes, Mayor, City Council, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my Director of Finance, Angelina Garcia.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This item number 13, authorization approving the issuance of pension obligation bonds, was continued from the previous April 13th meeting to allow the City Council enough time to digest the material and to have a thorough review and come back with necessary questions. We have a representative from Columbia Capital, who are our municipal financial advisors, assisting us with this process, available here to answer any more detailed, in-depth questions you might have.
I have a few questions on this item here. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends that state and local governments do not issue PBOs for the following reasons. Number one, the invested PBO proceeds might fail to earn more than the interest rate over the term of the bonds, leading to increase or overall liabilities for the government. Number two, POBs are complex instruments that carry considerable risk. POB's structure may incorporate the use of guaranteed investment contract swaps and derivatives, which must be intensely scrutinized, as these embedded products introduce counterparty risk, credit risk, and interest rate risk. Number 3, issuing taxable debt to fund the pension liability increases the jurisdiction's bond debt burden and potentially uses up debt capacity that could be used for other purposes. In addition, taxable debt is typically issued without call options or with make-whole calls, which can make more difficult and costly to refund and restructure that traditional tax-exempt debt. POBs are frequently structured in a manner that defers the principal payments or extends repayments over a period longer than the actual amortization period, thereby increasing the sponsor's overall cost. Number 5, rating agencies do not view the proposed issuance of POBs as credit positive, particularly if the issuance is not part of the more comprehensive plan to address pension funding shortfalls. These bonds are risk. These bonds are risk, and we need to have those questions answered before I would approve that. So I would make a motion to table this until we do have those answers to these questions.
Yes, we have our consultant in the audience to answer those questions.
To answer these specific questions?
Yes. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council, and city staff. My name is Mike Williams. I'm a managing director with Columbia Capital.
Excuse me, Mike, can you take your mask off because you're looking garbled there?
Yeah, it'll be easier for me. Okay. I'm with Columbia Capital. I'm a managing director, and I'm here to address any of the questions, and I can talk to these specifically about the GFOA's not recommending the pension obligation bonds. First of all, Mayor, you mentioned that the bond proceeds from a pension obligation bond might not earn the interest rate, that the interest rate on the pension obligation bonds might be higher than the earnings from CalPERS. Right now, CalPERS is charging the city 7% on that accrued liability, and currently the market for pension obligation bonds is in the low 3% range. So if the money that goes to PERS after the bonds are issued does not earn that the pension obligation bond interest rate, that's a big problem for PERS. Their bogey is 7%, and basically you're cutting that interest rate in half that you're paying. One of our other clients that issued pension obligation bonds had an analysis done by a pension consultant who's also a pension consultant for the city here, and done analysis and said that at least for our other client, there was an 80% probability that the earnings from PERS would be higher than the interest cost. So actually right now, this time is historically low interest rates, so this is really the best time to do that. So I think when the GFOA made these recommendations, it was probably 5 or 10 years ago when interest rates were a lot higher. So to address that specific question, we think it's reasonable to believe that the city is going to earn more through PERS than the cost of the pension obligation bonds. Your other question and comment from GFOA was that pension obligation bonds are very complex instruments that incorporate, for example, guaranteed investment contracts, interest rate swaps, derivatives, etc. The proposed structure for the city's bonds do not have any of these derivative structures. They're simple, plain vanilla, fixed rate, long-term bond. The final maturity that we're recommending for the bonds to be sold is the same final maturity on the obligations that you owe to PERS. So there's no extension of maturity. There's no deferral of principal. And this is, basically a plain vanilla type of a structure. Your third question or a comment from GFOA was that issuing taxable debt to fund pension liability increases the jurisdiction's bonded debt burden. That is true, but the city owes PERS the amount for the accrued unfunded liabilities. So it's a debt that is owed and cannot be avoided. Several cities in the past 10 or 15 years have filed for bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy court found that the obligation to PERS is an obligation that must be paid. So you're just replacing, an obligation for an obligation. Number 4, on the pension obligation bonds, they're frequently structured in a manner that defers principal payment or extends the repayment period. I think I've already mentioned that there's going to be principal and interest payments for every annual payment, and that the final payment is not going to be any later than what is currently scheduled with your PERS payments. And lastly was a question or comment from GFOA that the rating agencies may not view the proposed issuance of POBs as credit positive. We have not seen that to be the case. We have seen the rating agencies give high ratings, the same as a general obligation bond that would be voter approved. The rating agencies understand that regardless of whether you pay those unfunded accrued liabilities with pension obligation bonds or directly to PERS, that you owe the money and you have to pay it. So you have either PERS as your, the one that you owe the money to, or the pension obligation bond holders. So really there's no difference, and we haven't seen any difference in rating. We expect the city to be in the AA rating category for those.
Have you taken into consideration the Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act of 2021?
That Relief Act basically gives cities more time to pay. They stretch out the maturity. They defer principal payments, but we don't think that's an option it's a good option for a city that has a credit rating like Pico Rivera, because they're still going to have to pay the 7%, and what this pension obligation bond does is reduce that interest rate or interest cost about half.
We're still dealing with a tremendous amount of risk, and we still haven't explored all the options here. I would like to make a motion to table this until we examine this further and actually have written a response to the questions that I have. Also in the inclusion of the Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act and the impact it would have on our current situation right now. Can I get a second?
May I make a comment? I had the opportunity of reading through the documents and also having an additional meeting with our finance director, Ms. Garcia, and I asked her some probing questions. And I read that article this morning from the Whittier Daily, and I liked it because it raised some of those concerns. But it's my understanding that this action just triggers the start. It's kind of like the action that we took with the 218 process with the rates. It triggers the legal mechanism by which they're going to go about and project rates. And then they're going to come back to us. We still got to decide on an underwriter, correct?
That is correct.
We still got to vote on the finalization of this. So by approving this tonight, it just allows the starting mechanism to take place. We're not obligated to anything. But there are certain time constraints. It's dependent upon market interest rates, And there's a leg, there's like a 90-day leg. You have to go to court, you have to do some filing, so on and so forth, correct?
At a minimum, yes.
I paid attention.
Yes.
So in that meantime, we could, staff could still address the concerns that you raised, which I think are very valid. And then at the end of the day, if we find that the numbers don't match out, because what's given to us are hypotheticals right now until they go to the market, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then at that point in time, we could say, hey, this financially isn't a good move. And it also allows us time to wrap our head around this whole idea.
Well, the agenda item isn't saying what you just explained, because what it's doing, it says authorization approving the issuance.
So would staff like to clarify?
Yes, so that is what the courts would need in order for us to start the validation process. And Mike, if you feel free to add, but this just allows us to go through the validation proceedings with the courts. We have members, I think it's Vanessa Legrand from Stradling here, to answer any additional questions on the validation. In the meantime, we're still going to explore the numbers. If it's going to be a recommendation to refinance the 41 million, 80% of that, and then also to your point, what the payoff period is. Is it in line with the CalPERS payoff period that's stated in the valuations, or do we want a longer tail, do we want a shorter tail? I think the overall goal for the city is to structure a financial plan that will pay off the liabilities and that will do it at minimize the interest rates that are charged. In this case, we're paying them, like Mike Williams said, instead of to CalPERS, we would be paying them to the bondholders at a fixed rate. I think what we presented a couple of weeks ago in terms of just the trajectory of what those payments have been, just the unfunded accrued liability portion, the annual payments that we've made to PERS, it's just continued to go up at a rate of 10% per year. So that we're trying to contain by taking that increase in annual UAL payments and structure it with a flat amount, recognizing that there are still going to be additional layers in the next years. And so one of the other items that we brought forward in the staff report was the development of a pension pay down policy to kind of even out the additional layers that are projected to still be layered on top, for lack of better words, in the out years. So this isn't a silver bullet by any means. It's coupled with all of the things that the city has already done, such as restructured, adding a tier 2, asking employees to pay their EPMC 7 and 8%, depending on the membership, developed or set up a Section 115 trust to help minimize the rate adjustments any given year. So we've done all of those things through the course of the last 20 years. This is a last lever that we can pull on to further minimize the impact of ongoing pension increases by PERS. But if ultimately we run all the numbers and we went through the different scenarios and this council deems it not to be a good idea, then we don't have to issue those bonds. That is not something that we have to decide on today. This action is just to start the validation proceedings with courts.
If that's the case, then the verbiage has to be changed here. Because what you're talking about right now is authorization approving the issuance, okay? And then you have the validation.
Yeah, as we mentioned, it will come back to council. This is necessary for the court to validate this process. This is the language that is necessary.
This is the language that's necessary for what?
For the validation process to the courts.
Okay, we're talking about two different items here. What you just explained to us right now was a plan, okay? I have not seen that plan.
That plan will come forward at
Well, then that's, when the plan comes in, then we should vote then, but not, just based on presentations here.
Apologize. I'll ask Vanessa Legbrat to see if she can maybe unmute her mic to add in some of the legal proceedings and to touch on the verbiage in the resolution or the item that we have forward. And if we have to make an adjustment to how it's presented, that we can bring it back.
And this is time sensitive, correct? Because
Yes, it
the
is.
first
It's time
preferred
sensitive
being in
more
July.
because of just the changes in the interest rates. But again, we have time. We have a little bit of time.
Do we have to make payments as a payment as well, or PERS payment?
Well, we will have to make the UAL payment this July. We typically do it in one lump sum payment because CalPERS gives us a slight discount if we pay it all up front instead of every 2 weeks with payroll.
Director Garcia, what would be the difference in payments if this was rolled out? The current UAL payment versus the projected payment?
So we did have a structure put into the presentation. It will vary just based on the valuation projections. At a minimum, it will be $800,000. That let's say that it's $800,000, right? Obviously, it will change since we have future validations underway. That $800,000 will not be written out of the budget or will not decrease our expenditures. What we would do with that $800 is deposit it into the Section 115 trust so that it could earn a higher interest. And when we do need to count on it to make future normal cost contributions, that we can pull from that Section 115 trust. So it's just a better return for your investment if you put it through the Section 115 trust.
We anticipate $15 million savings over 25 years.
And it's, in essence, we're not eliminating debt or discounting debt, we're simply spreading it over more time and allocating funds that we currently have and put it to better use.
Yes, for a slightly better interest rate, yes, return.
Member,
Yeah, I just want to also capitalize on Councilmember Lutz's comments. It also, we do get a discount, though. We get a discount by the large payment that we make, right?
Yeah, a slight discount.
Yeah, so we get a slight discount because we're making a large payment. The kicker for me, which sold me on this mechanism, is that it's taking that delta, it's taking that hypothetical $800,000 and it's putting it in that trust. And it's restricted funds. So future councils can't raid that excess money and use it on roads or pet projects. That trust fund is specifically designed to pay off future liabilities. So we're saving money up front, we're taking that savings, we're putting it in a trust fund, we're capitalizing on a higher interest rate, so that later, when we need to use it for future liabilities, it's there. But I just wanted to make clear, we're not voting on an underwriter today. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and I concur with Councilmember Lada's statement as to the timing of it, but, you know, I can understand the mayor's concern as far as authorizing the issuance of bonds, how it can sound very misleading, but again, just to reiterate what was asked, nothing that if we approve today does not obligate us to go and sell bonds,
Right.
or go and issue bonds, or anything.
That is correct, Mayor and Council. And if I may make a suggestion, just to try and get us over the hurdle, is maybe just to the consideration of a language change to the resolution, which instead of as it currently reads, it would state a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pico Rivera authorizing taking initial steps towards the consideration of the issuance of bonds to refund certain pension obligations. So that will get us over that hurdle to get all of us on this side moving in that direction, but hopefully to ease the comfort of the council that it's still going to come back to you. So if we make that modification to that, to the heading of the resolution, and hopefully it'll make it clear that you're authorizing staff to take those initial steps, which would also include the validation action and approving certain agreements that are before you. So, not a final action.
I would motion that amendment.
I
can you repeat that again?
Yes. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Pico Rivera, California, authorizing taking initial steps towards the consideration of the issuance of bonds to refund certain pension obligations of the city, approving the form and authorizing the execution of a trust agreement and purchase contract. So again, it reiterates that it's those initial steps that we need to do to move this down the track.
I'll second that.
May I weigh in here?
This is Vanessa Legrand.
Do we need to?
Yeah,
Do we need to? Do we need at this point?
Thank you. As Angelina said, this is Vanessa Legrand. I'm serving as bond counsel. This is in connection with the pension obligation bonds. The reason for the
Vanessa?
language in the resolution
Sorry,
is
Vanessa.
so. Excuse me?
You're out of order.
Vanessa, you have not yet been recognized as the city attorney, and I know you're
I'm
going to
sorry.
jump in with some technical, either it's going to get shut down tonight if you weigh in, and I know that there are some, I've done hundreds of these, and I'm trying to assist my client, the city council, to get past tonight's activities so that we can move this down the line. If you want to weigh in and you feel that there's an urgent need to do so, and if the mayor wants to recognize you, you may do so. So it's up to the mayor. Do you want to recognize the speaker?
I don't at this time. We have a motion.
Yeah.
We have a second?
Yeah, this second, yeah.
Okay, vote.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item number 14, fiscal year 2021, third quarter treasurer's report.
Promise this is the last time I'll speak to you. So this is the treasurer's report that you have in front of you for the quarter ending March 31st. Now, it usually goes under consent as it is the receive and file, but, just for full transparency, we wanted to put it under regular items because there was a drop experienced in the 5-year treasuries. And so the way that the treasury report is structured, it reports a market value decrease. And so we wanted to clarify the difference between a change in the market value of the assets held and the actual return. Now, the actual return is still around 1.4% that Chandler holds on our earnings when compared to the LAIF rate of less than, I think today it was at 31 basis points. We are still tracking and performing better than LAIF. Chandler is performing better than LAIF. Additionally, what the market value represents, the market value loss represents is a 15 basis point dip in the market value of our assets. So if we were to sell our assets today, which we're not doing, it would be at a 15 basis points loss. So we would actually get more money than we invested. That's not the case, right? The other side of it is the interest rate that we're earning on these investments, which is still 1.4% on an annual basis. So we just wanted to clarify that and make special mention on this treasurer's report.
That concludes.
City manager staff reports?
We need a motion.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, at this time,
We need a motion.
Oh, motion
item.
passed.
Oh. I'd like to make a motion that we receive and file the treasurer's report for the quarter ending March 31st, 2021, and it represents a balance in activities of the third quarter for fiscal year 2020 and 2021.
Thank you.
Second?
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, at this time, I'd like to bring up Javier Hernandez, my assistant to the city manager. He's going to do a presentation on, you had mentioned earlier about our pursuit of grant funds. Wanted to update the city council of our current requests for addition funding at the local, the federal, and the state level. So, Javier?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Javier Hernandez here, Assistant to the City Manager, here to provide an update on legislative effort at the federal, state, and local level. Just to kind of get us started, I just wanted to throw out a quick reminder of some of the efforts we've been undertaking that I've done a presentation on in previous council meetings, that is. This is the Whittier Narrows Dam Mitigation Program. If you recall, we quantified the impacts associated with that project to the tune of $125 million. We took that number into a bite-size approach, and we submitted our initial request of $50 million to the U.S. congressional process, where $25 million is dedicated to our water treatment project, $15 million would be dedicated to our commercial corridors, $10 million dedicated to our river corridors. And there's certainly more detail with each and every one of those, but just to provide a high-level reminder with respect to our mitigation program at the federal level. Of course, all of this was done in consultation with our congressional representative's office, as well as with our federal lobbyists, who have been very supportive of this effort
But
altogether.
before you do that,
Yes.
okay, we made a request of 125 million, okay, and you're talking about bite-sized portions of 50. How are you going to structure a contract that's going to be able to do that?
So, not entirely certain what you mean by a contract, but one of the things that we're looking to do is try to introduce these different initiatives as part of different legislative processes. For example, and I'll show you in the next.
Well, wait a minute, no, because again, this is important, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The way the federal government contracts, okay, is not the way that you're explaining the way that it goes right there, all right? Because what it has to do is that there has to be a contract that you draw down from, okay? So the idea that we submitted a request for 125 and you're coming in with 50, okay, without structuring the contract is putting it at a disadvantage. It'll be very difficult to be able to collect the 75 million.
Right. So I understand exactly what you mean. It's difficult to get to a point of creating and establishing a contract until we've introduced legislative language or a legislative appropriations at that federal level. So until we have a budget in our line item in the federal budget that allocates a portion of those dollars, we wouldn't get to a point where we'd be able to establish a contract at that point to draw down those dollars. So the first step is to work with our federal legislators to ultimately champion a piece of legislation so that we can allocate money or appropriate dollars to this mitigation program. So the approach that we've taken is to break it down into these three elements here, and the next part of this slide here kind of gives you a better understanding of what we're ultimately trying to do. So you may be familiar with the federal earmarks, the community funding request program that was just launched a couple weeks back. Part of this request was submitted directly and into even smaller bite-sized pieces, where we submit a direct allocation a direct request of $5 million to our congressional representative, Linda Sanchez. We just got word late last week, that of the 4 projects that we've identified here, $2.5 million is being advanced, and that's towards our water treatment facility. So that $2.5 million is the first tranche of that initial $25 million request that we're submitting for the water treatment project altogether. So it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. There's certainly no question about that. The project, as you are all aware, is going to be until 2026. So trying to introduce it kind of a bit by bit, while at the same time tell our story, demonstrate the need, not only to our congressional representative, who is well aware of what we're dealing with, but really to the rest of the congressional body as well, so that they thoroughly understand, one, the urgent need of the project, and then, of course, the impact that it has to us here locally. And then ultimately, again, introduce a piece of legislation that would allow us an opportunity to appropriate dollars to these projects. Once those dollars are appropriated, the two houses reconcile, they bring forward a bill to the president's desk, and the president signs that bill. At that point, we would be able to enter into some form of a contract depending on the body, the federal body or governing agency that would be responsible for doling those dollars. So again, $2.5 million that we know are advancing out of that request. So it's a big achievement, certainly. On top of that, we're also submitting an additional $21 million as a request through strategic partnerships. We were only able to submit a certain amount of projects, again, those 4 right on the top, on the right-hand side. So, but in direct partnership with LA Metro, they submitted a $10 million request on our behalf. That's associated, of course, with the Gold Line project. We already have a Washington Boulevard Bridge project over the Rio Hondo. This will provide us an additional $10 million that is required to build that bridge to the specifications necessary for the Gold Line. We also partnered directly with LA County Supervisor Hilda Solis for an additional $10 million request. That one there is to essentially draw down dollars for Rosemead Boulevard and the Complete Streets project. That's part of a master plan that the Gateway Council of Governments has undertaken in previous years. And then, of course, we also partner with the Gateway Council of Governments to submit a $1 million request. Those requests, of course, to be determined exactly what the outcome is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just have a question as, there's three major properties that get impacted through the Weir Dam Safety Improvement Project.
Right.
And, it's the $125 million.
Mhm.
Streamland Park is going to be lost, and Pico Boys have nowhere to play. Where does that fit into this equation and this ask to
Yep.
create brand-new parks for those that are being displaced?
Absolutely. Great question. One of the efforts as part of our partnership with LA County Supervisor Hilda Solis, the LA County Department of Parks and Recs, we've identified a 47-acre parcel of land, which is currently known as a strawberry farm immediately adjacent to Lake. That is no longer going to be used for agricultural purposes, is going to be repurposed for the expansion of Lake as a recreational facility. So we are partnering directly with LA County Supervisors so that we can enter into a shared use agreement for the use of that 47 acres. And so we're essentially going to enter into a process to master plan that site and make it the new headquarters for the Pico Boys. They've already expressed interest and already supporting us by providing us with interim fields for us to utilize while we build out that site. But also just to note on that, the 47 acres is within the LA County unincorporated community, just south of Lake. So it's technically not in the city of Pico Rivera. It's just north of us, maybe a quarter of a mile north of the city's northern boundary. But nevertheless, it's 47 acres of available land that can be relatively soon converted into recreational park space with an emphasis on sports and organized sports facilities.
Councilman?
Does the Washington Bridge have to be upgraded, or is that just being upgraded in anticipation for the Gold Line?
That's a great question. The bridge was, there was an assessment done on the bridge. Our Public Works Director, Monica Heredia, can provide additional detail, but there was an assessment completed on that bridge that found that bridge to be structurally unsound and in need of repair. Not even repair, replacement. You can't just simply repair the existing bridge. You literally have to knock it down and rebuild it. And so we already had secured $30 million in state funding, which was then provided by the federal funds through the Federal Highway Grant Program. And so that $30 million is $10 million shy of what Metro needs to build that bridge a little bit wider for it to accommodate the Gold Line. So we had already exhausted our ability to submit projects, so Metro stood up and essentially carried that for us. So they're they've already submitted a $10 million request on our behalf. But now we will be upgrading the specifications of that bridge to accommodate the Gold Line.
Got it. Thank you. Very detailed. I mean, if they have to improve that bridge regardless if Gold Line's coming, couldn't we just defer that whole cost to Metro?
Not necessarily, because there's another component associated with this, and I didn't want to get too far into the detail of the presentation, but it's a really good question. So the thing is that the city of Pico Rivera is responsible per the expenditure plan in Measure M to contribute 3% of the total cost of the Gold Line project as our local contribution match. We, I think it's $2.5 million, Monica, if I'm not mistaken, that we've contributed towards that bridge. But now, because we are able to contribute the full 30 million plus our 2.5 local match, plus the 10 million, our overall contribution now is approximately $45 million as opposed to $2.5 million. So that's kind of the benefit, is that we get to keep these grant dollars that we've already secured and allocate it to fixing that bridge, as opposed to Metro having to build it and then us having to contribute to that project anyway.
Thank you. Member Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. So my follow-up question would be, if the plans are to upgrade that bridge and expand it, do we know at this point whether the train is going to be coming above ground or at ground level?
At that particular point, it will be at grade, at ground level, street level, that is, mainly because it's going to be on that bridge. And the bridge, the new specifications would be to essentially sustain the load of that light rail.
And will it change at grade along the course up until the city limits?
That's a good question, and that's certainly a question that's still outstanding. Working with Metro, they're currently working on 12% designs and reinstating the environmental document, and they will certainly be answering that question as part of that environmental process, because it is part of an alternative analysis that they did on that alignment. So to be determined, exactly.
Do we have an anticipated time frame for response on that?
I'd have to get back to you. We haven't gotten an updated timeline from Metro since the last presentation, and that was prior to them taking in our comments on the 12% designs.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Member Kim?
Okay, continue with the presentation. Just to continue, so as of now, we have submitted $151 million in total requests to the federal government. And of course, now the advocacy efforts truly begin in order to hopefully secure as much of that as we possibly can. Just a continuation here. Like I said, we've been working with our congressional representative, Linda Sanchez. Now there's a whole nother side of the House of the Congress, and that's Senate. So we're going to be working closely with our federal lobbyists to determine a strategy and an ultimate funding request that would go directly to Senator Padilla and Senator Feinstein in the great state of California. And ultimately what we're trying to do is align as best we can with the president's proposals that really align around transportation infrastructure and quality of life infrastructure. And this kind of gives you an idea of what we're pursuing. Some up-and-coming opportunities include all those listed here, but the more immediate ones that you see are, of course, the water resources and infrastructure bill. That's something that the legislature is currently working on, and that's why we've submitted all of these requests with the idea that some of these requests would end up in one of these bills. So things like Rosemead Boulevard, Whittier Boulevard, Washington Boulevard would hopefully end up in the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. Of course, our partnerships with the county and with Metro makes it for a much stronger request. We're also going to be pursuing some grants, the RAISE grants, a transportation grant at the federal level as well. So number of opportunities coming down the line. We're working with all of our legislators to hopefully secure some funding through these programs. Then we trickle down to the state level. A couple of things to keep in mind is that our senator here that represents the city of Pico Rivera has introduced Senate Bill 268, which establishes a River Parks Special Assessment District here along the Rio Hondo, the lower Rio Hondo and the lower San Gabriel River as well. That allows us to kind of keep some of our local tax dollars locally as opposed to them going to a county pool, otherwise known as Measure A. Allowing us to better more competitive opportunity for us to secure those dollars and apply them to establishing new parks along the rivers. Then we've submitted an $11 million direct funding request to the senator as well that include that program there, again, to coincide with the federal program. So ultimately the overall intent is to leverage to the extent possible. We have some direct upcoming opportunities we've got our eye on, and we'll be working to submit more funding requests. We're also working with our Assembly member Garcia to submit a direct request to her office. We're also working with the governor's office on the electric vehicle and clean energy initiatives, and of course working closely with SCAG as our partner at the regional level, the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, the Waters Conservation Authority, and of course we're going to be looking at programs such as Measure A here at the regional level as well for our water infrastructure. We have already submitted a number of grants. Within the coming months, we hopefully will have some positive news, but we have submitted a $17 million grant, a Prop 68 grant request. You may be familiar with that. I know Pam did a presentation, our Parks Director did a presentation on that a couple council meetings ago. But we also have a couple of other smaller size grants, but ultimately with those funds allow us an opportunity to really position the city to further secure additional implementation dollars in the future as well. So at the state level, we have a total of $29.3 million in outstanding requests to be determined whether or not we have more in the very near future. Yes, questions?
Now, who's helping us push these items forward on the state level? I know that we have our Mercury that's taking the lead with the federal side in regards to the Whittier Narrows Dam, but do we have anyone assisting us pushing these state items forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And that would really, I really got to tip my hat to the different legislative offices, so Senator Archuleta's office and Assemblymember Garcia's office, who have been incredibly helpful in advancing some of these proposals, initiatives, projects, and requests. But you also have our regional partners, such as Los Angeles County, the Supervisors District, independent departments. You also have other agencies that we've been working closely with, like Caltrans at the state level. And then, of course, the water districts as well have also been incredibly helpful.
But I guess my question is, do we have someone specifically in Sacramento walking the pavement for us, making sure that these items go forward?
Not necessarily.
That's fine.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned some allocations from Assemblymember Garcia, and I know there's been some talk about the legislation on housing around what is the Assembly Bill? I'm blanking right now. I think I have it here. I don't remember what it is, and I don't see it here.
I'll look it up.
AB 672, AB 672. And that proposal is to use a percentage of golf course space to build housing, affordable housing. And so would that, if this earmark funding that you're mentioning with Christina Garcia, would that be something that she's looking toward us encompassing in Pico Rivera?
Truthfully, it's not something that's been a part of our conversations as of yet, largely because I was unfamiliar with that bill. But I'm happy to certainly do my research on that and determine whether or not it's, and of course outreach to her office and determine if that's something that they'd be willing to entertain. And I can certainly have some information back to you by the end of the week.
I mean, AB 672, I don't think that's something that I'm favorable of in terms of building houses on our golf course. It's, flood zone area, there's power cords, and we don't even own it. I don't know that we'd be able to. And so I don't want to engage in a conversation of, we'll give you this grant, but you have to build on your golf course.
Sure.
That's what I would like to avoid.
Okay. Noted.
I don't know if my colleagues feel the same way, but that is my understanding.
Thank you. I'll certainly do my research on that and at least provide a response.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that there was $100 million set aside for water infrastructure, and they tapped Assemblymember Garcia's office. She had made some phone calls. I know she specifically reached out to Pico Water in regards to funding PFAS, and I think the $100 million was in relation to the state of California as a whole, but they specifically tapped her office for it because she had led the charge on PFAS. And they were trying to set aside some additional funding for us in regards to our water treatment.
That most certainly was part of our conversation, largely because it is one of the most urgent priorities within our city, and also because of the fact that at the federal level, Congresswoman has already selected that project for initial direct earmark funding, and then the idea is to then leverage that at the state level. If there's an opportunity to do that, it just kind of grows our funding opportunities kind of exponentially from there.
Thank you.
So we'll certainly follow up on that and continue that conversation with her office.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Okay. And then here at the local and regional level, a couple of things to highlight. I've touched a little bit on the partnership with LA County, both the supervisor's office and, of course, some of the respective departments that have purview within the area, such as the Flood Control District, the Parks and Recs Department, the Public Works Department, et cetera. These are just a couple of things that we've identified. To your point, council member, regarding the Pico Boys. We are in the process of identifying some temporary space to accommodate them, but then we're looking at the 47-acre Strawberry Farm as a more permanent home. We're also looking at the Rio Hondo and San Gabriel River revitalization, kind of again, tailgating off the idea of the Senate Bill 268 with Senator Archuleta. And then, of course, coordinated funding requests. And, of course, we have the supervisor, Hilda Solis, who's going to be the chair at Metro this coming July. So we're keeping an eye on that so we can position the city to secure additional funding and resources. We're also partnering with the Gateway COG. This one here is pretty exciting as well. We all know we have the Gold Line coming in. So we're going to be working with the new board member, our neighbor next door, the city of Whittier, Director Dutra, Councilmember Dutra, and hopefully establish some kind of connection, partnership between the county, us, and that board member. We're also working on some master planning efforts along, again, the rivers, the community broadband network, the River Parks District, etc. We're looking to submit another $500,000 grant to Metro for a historic Whittier Boulevard Open Streets program. And I'll provide detail on that a little bit later. But nevertheless, we're also pursuing the Gateway COG's legislative support when it comes to advancing our mitigation program for the Whittier Narrows Dam project. And Councilmember Lara, to your point about who do we have at the state level to support us, this is the way we're leveraging our partners here locally and regionally. So if we can get a board vote to support our efforts, that'll also help us secure some support at the state level as well. And with that, yep, that's the last slide. Certainly happy to entertain any additional questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to note for council that we submitted a memo last Friday regarding our community engagement plan. That is something that we are looking for comments from council to have your input. So again, you guys have that for review. I think we put a deadline of May 3rd. Is that correct? Yes. So if you guys have an opportunity to take a look at that, and feel free to ask us any questions if you have any.
You've already sent it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have, can we schedule something where we can make comment? Okay. Are you through?
That is it.
Yes, okay. Let's go to good of the order. Let's begin with Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to mention item number 11 prior in the agenda. It was a difficult decision for me, but I wanted to also request to staff, it's really important to me that we prioritize our cleaning our water. Clean water is a priority, and the only way that we could do that is to raise our rates a few cents in order to ensure that we make sure that we have clean water. But I think that I would like to request to staff if you could look for resources outside or county, state, or federal related to drought tolerant vegetation for homes and businesses, so that during the summertime and when people need to water their yards, their grass doesn't die, and maybe they can have some type of relief on water bills. And also education efforts related to water conservation in honor of Earth Day that we just passed our resolution, reminding people that we are not out of a drought, and I believe two counties have already issued, the governor has already issued drought counties within the state, and we probably are not too long to follow. So in addition, if there are any subsidies for low-income or seniors to help them with their water bill. I know that the city of San Fernando, for instance, has small subsidies that they can assist residents with fixed income. So I think we did a good thing today in taking a first step to making sure we have funds to fund our water infrastructure and make sure we have clean water. However, I know it's not going to exactly be popular in the area, but I wanted to just be sure to let residents know that we are making sure that we have clean water, and water is essential for our families. So I wanted to highlight that. The next thing that I wanted to mention is As the chairperson of the Community Services Committee, our city manager addressed the strategic plan. We have a strategic plan work group. We're calling I call it the SWAG group, but SWG group is a group of stakeholders that basically, when we're thinking about our community services, I'm asking myself, I don't know. We really don't know. We need a comprehensive survey, and we felt that we need to make data-informed decisions. And so I requested staff, and staff have moved forward to develop a survey, which is in your email. There's a draft survey, not only for residents, but also for employees, for our own staff, who most of them, or several of them, are also residents. So we have a strategic work group that will be meeting regularly, and then we have a strategic plan survey that's going to go out and help, that will help advise us on what our biggest needs are. That hopefully that survey will intended to be in English and Spanish, optional. We can make it electronic as well as over the phone. We're going to try to get different venues. We'll have meetings in person as well as different formats, so we can try to get a large group of people to chime in and give us their feedback. And it asks questions related to the city's and the residents' biggest needs. So that there's more to come on that in the future. Lastly, two more things I quickly want to mention is next week will be our National Day of Prayer at 6:30 p.m. If you haven't noticed on social media, please join us here outdoors at City Hall for the National Day of Prayer. And lastly, our business grants, our small business grants are due April 30th. So if you need any assistance, reach out to the Economic Development Department. And we know several of our residents and businesses could take advantage of that. So that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Camacho?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted a few items I wanted to mention. Last meeting I mentioned about the Summer Road to Literacy Book Drive that is taking place. A committee of community leaders got together to raise up to 10, if not more, $1,000 to for all the proceeds to benefit all the kindergartners at Rancho Unified School District by purchasing 5 books or more plus supplies for their summer reading program. And I just wanted to mention again, we do have some raffle items that are, it's a 2-night stay at the El Caliente Resort and Spa in Rancho Mirage. $50 a ticket. Just want to mention this is an effort that we're doing on, so don't be shy. Anybody that wants to buy a ticket, I got plenty available. Again, all proceeds go to the kids, the kindergartners from our Rancho Unified School District. In addition to that, I just wanted to give a brief update as to the Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee. There's been a series of meetings, some in particular, as was mentioned. We moved forward in the business grant program that Councilman Lada joined me on, and as was mentioned by Mayor Pro Tem, that the $10,000 information is available on the website. So let's get folks engaged, and hopefully we have a good response. We did also meet regarding the citywide beautification efforts. Again, Councilman Lada joined me on that conversation. We discussed various areas of improvement throughout the city, but we focus on our medians in particular, and highlighting Telegraph and Whittier Boulevard, utilizing the citywide beautification master plan. I know we had a discussion earlier, and it was recommended that we look at other ways of, whether it be palm trees or other ways to beautify our mediums. I'm all for that. I think any room and ways that we can beautify our corridors be important, and so that's an ongoing conversation that we're going on. We did have another meeting within the public right-of-way cleanups. Mayor Elias is on that group. We're talking about the rails, freeways, riverbeds. This is areas that we cannot, as a city, just walk in and clean up. And it's something that, the cleanup does occur. There's never a schedule. There never appears to be a schedule unless we, proactively. But in that conversation, we're going to begin to develop a plan as to working with Union Pacific, BNSF, Caltrans, LA County Flood Control, Edison, and LEDWP to make sure that we identify these locations that, they do develop a schedule because it's not acceptable for them to clean up whenever they feel like cleaning up, if you will, because our community gets to deal with all this litter, whether it be the on-ramps and off-ramps on the freeways, the 605 to, again, the rail underpasses. So something that we'll continue to discuss, Mayor, and go from there. Also wanted to mention about the apprenticeship program and workforce development. I've been meeting with a school board member from Rancho Unified, Caroline Castillo, in regards to doing some preliminary research to begin by meeting with the Rancho Unified School District, Representative Rio Hondo College, Representative Construction and Trades Council, and the Pico Rivera Chamber of Commerce. And what we're working on is to develop this working group to identify there's two goals. One, and again, this is all research being done, is to identify the programs that currently exist that is available to our residents, whether it be apprenticeship programs that are being provided through the Trades and Construction Council, apprenticeship programs or certification programs that are provided at Rio Hondo College. And we as a city promote and educate and build awareness to our youth, our members who are have recently been incarcerated and released, especially right now with a 12.6 unemployment rate here in the city of Pico Rivera. I think it's very prudent. So identifying programs that exist so we can promote. In addition to that, also create and understand where the new industries are what the new industries are, the good paying industries, whether it be energy, transportation, water, health, and develop and hopefully lead us in a way of developing pathways for our community, for our residents. I think into those two components will, again, more so today in the city of Pico Rivera and trying to find employment and increase the labor pool in our city to work on this plan. So, again, a lot of research being done, working in conjunction with these entities. Once we do enough of the work and research, I'm going to bring it to the council as a presentation and determine what direction and steps, if any, the will of the council would move us in a direction into the program, again, dealing with apprenticeship programs and workforce development. In addition, we've been talking about developing 2-year, 5-year, 10-year economic recovery plan as we began to discuss last year, Mayor. And really, as we discussed earlier today, infrastructure improvement is economic development. There's so much already that has been approved and moving forward, and that needs to be told, the story needs to be told, laid out exactly where those improvements are going to happen and how we build upon those investments in those corridors, whether it be Whittier Boulevard, whether it be Washington Boulevard, whether it be Rosemead Boulevard. We need to now move forward in building upon what's the investments that are taking place today and developing these plans and reimagining our city as to, post-COVID. So those are things we've been working on, the Economic Development Committee, and moving forward. Lastly, just wanted to mention, I know I've been working with a community member, by the name of Genaro Moreno, a community leader, regarding developing a dog park and pet resource and services. I sit on the SIACA board, and we've been talking about this for a few years. COVID fortunately got in the way and prolonged this discussion. I know Councilmember Lutz have brought the issue of also creating the dog park, which we eventually did a recent call, and Councilmember Lutz can elaborate on with SIACA General Manager, a couple of commissioners, and staff to look into the viability of creating a dog park or parks, but more importantly, bringing it back to this body to determine what direction to go. We are a pet-friendly city. This is a conversation that's been going on for years. The question becomes, do we do it today? Do we do it tomorrow? And are we ready? But I know Councilmember Lutz will be working with together on that issue. That is all, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Lara?
Thank you. Just real briefly, in regards to item number 11, which was the water rate increase, I really wish we wouldn't put those items in consent calendar. I really wish that we would put any item that increases rates on our citizens in the general agenda. None of those items should be under consent calendar. Those items should be discussed individually. Each council member should weigh in on them, and each council member should vote specifically on that item. I voted yes for that item because, one, it starts the process. It doesn't mean I'm going to vote yes at the end of the day in terms of increasing rates. I'm a little concerned about the initial projections that were given to us regarding the water rate study, because the assumption was that there was only going to be like $4 million coming from WRD, and that the city would have to fund the remaining in regards to PFAS, PFOA treatment, which stands at about $13 million. It seems like we're going to get way more money than that. We might get the whole thing funded when you take a look at the $2.4 million that Linda Sanchez is pushing through, when you look at money Cristina Garcia is pushing through, when you take a look at money that WRD is being pressured to give more money, and other funding sources. That changes the metric with the water rates. So I hope that our water rate person goes back and projects that, because that then changes how much we have to increase water rates by. Because then that takes off the table the city having to reach into our pockets and raid the water fund for things that are going to be funded from other sources.
Andrew, if I may have a question about that, about the WRD. The WRD grant only paid for the filtration system, so we still do not have operational costs covered. Is that correct? So that is why the rate projections were given to us?
Well, but that's been part of the discussion with the pumpers. See, the discussion was that, one, there was two things. The pumpers felt that WRD was being very stingy in terms of how much money they're giving on upfront costs. And secondly, the pumpers are fighting for at least 50% of operations and maintenance going forward. So these are things that are still in flux and are still being discussed. But you are correct, that was their initial show. And then when they came before us, we said, hey, wait a minute. Pico Rivera is facing higher PFAS and PFOA levels than other communities. We need more money. And then that's when we made it very clear. And then there's been offline discussions with the pumpers. I know the Southeast Water Coalition that I'm a member of, we're discussing that, and they're trying to push and force WRD's hand. I don't know if the staff members also wanted to weigh in.
If I can just add to that, in addition to the PFAS matters, we are also funding for a ton of infrastructure outside of the PFAS matter. So the 5-year plan that was presented does not cover all of the unfunded needs. So even if the city were to receive grants, currently as it stands, it doesn't cover for all the infrastructure needs. And I will add that we cannot include funding that we have not yet acquired. So if additional funding comes down the pipeline, we can incorporate that. This is not a final where rates are set for.
This is exactly why this discussion needed to be held in a regular agenda item and not consent calendar. See, because what you're going to do, not you, but what's going to be asked of this council is that we vote on rate increases based upon projections that were presented for PFAS treatment. WRD grant money, we didn't take into account all the potential other money that's coming. And I understand your argument, which is valid. But at the end of the day, we're going to be asked to increase water rates on old projections. And I don't like doing that. If I'm going to raise someone's water rate, I want it to be on accurate money. And I get it. We still have a bunch of unfunded water needs. But when the water rate study was presented to us, it was presented to us that we need to raise water rates predominantly for PFAS treatment and for these other things. But it was predominantly for PFAS treatment. So this is why these items, anytime we raise rates on our residents, it needs to be discussed. It just can't be a consent item. We did that for the NASA contract, and we did that for this. And that's completely inappropriate in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just like to make a comment on that. We did have a study session on the water rates, and I believe we had a pretty elaborate discussion on that. But as far as bringing it back on consent, I understand those concerns and we'll address those. But I think we had an hour presentation, if not an hour and a half, on the water rates prior to.
Yeah, we did, which I agree, but I don't know if the study sessions, and they maybe, are privy to the public. And these discussions, when the public tunes in, they don't tune in for the study sessions. They tune in for the council meetings. And if we're going to raise rates, It needs to be discussed during an agendized council meeting.
Council member, do you have an action that you want to propose?
No, I'm sorry, I went long-winded on that, because we already voted on the item. It's still gonna come back before us. I wish that the person who did our water rate study takes a look at these items and gives us some projections, but I'm sorry, I went kind of long-winded, my apologies, but I want to continue on some other items I want to bring about. You know, ever since being elected a council member, it's, what a rat race. Like what a rat race this is. Not in terms of my position, but just in terms of like all the work the city does to try to get money to improve like lives of our residents. If it's our infrastructure, if it's our quality of life, if it's our protection, you know, it's money from here, money from there. We're writing grants and we're crossing our fingers that something's going to hit, right? And it just feels like a rat race. You know, we talk about revenue enhancements, and we need revenue for our medians, for our broadband, for fiber optic, for water, for sewer, for streets, for pension bond obligation. The list just goes on. I don't know of any other revenue venture that exists that can generate a significant amount of money aside from cannabis. Last year, then the mayor, Gustavo Camacho, established a cannabis ad hoc committee. But due to the pandemic, that venture was placed on the back burner, and rightfully so. Now, I would like to revive that idea. So, assuming that I get a second, I'm not asking for it quite yet, but I would like to direct staff to research the potential for a revenue source coming from cannabis. That would include the initial registration of fees. You know, just the initial startup, some cities are getting $3 to $4 million just through the registration of fees. Revenue from dispensaries, what a yearly revenue would look like. Yearly revenue from the distribution of cannabis within our city. You know, people get on apps and they request cannabis and it's delivered to them within our city. We're seeing none of that. And that transaction is already taking place. The yearly revenue from cultivation of cannabis within the city. The yearly revenue of testing within the city of cannabis. And maybe there's other items that I'm missing that you can think of. But there's a caveat to all this. In each of those categories, 2% needs to be directed to a fund that is then divided 4 ways with our veteran organizations. This fund then issues monthly or quarterly payments to them. This allows those organizations, such as the VFWs times 2 and the American Legions times 2, to invest in themselves. A no strings attached money. They can invest it in their infrastructure. You know, you walk into those places, the roof needs repair. The city was generous enough to give them a $10,000 grant last year, but they needed more than that. The bathrooms are shot. The floors are shot. It allows them to invest in their infrastructure. It allows them to do scholarships. It allows them to do grants for RBA and Pico boys. It allows them to do counseling and maybe even invest in that resource center that they talk about, that they asked us about. You know, some of that could be potentially, when you look at some projections.
Mayor, if I may, I believe this is out of order.
What? No.
You go in specific details about a cannabis business related to.
No. Yeah, please let me finish. I'm not done. It allows them to invest in things. What I'm not asking that we approve cannabis tonight, or that we approve cannabis in 2 weeks, by no means. I'm asking for staff to just research what the revenue would be, because I believe there's money being left on the table for a variety of reasons. And that's it. Research, show the potential revenue sources, because that revenue could be invested in other things. I went long-winded. Can I please get a second on that idea?
Mayor, if I may?
Please a second.
I mean, I don't want to second, I would like to comment.
It's not.
He has a motion right there. You need a second. Do we have a second?
If there's no second, then there's no further
Well,
discussion.
there's a second. I second it.
Thank you. So staff is then directed to research the item. Thank you.
May I
Lastly-
comment if there's a discussion now?
Well, this is not a discussion item.
Well, here, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the Brown Act provides that members of the legislative body, the city council, have a right to present brief comments on items that are not on the agenda. And it's the discretion of the council what is defined as brief. If there's a comment from one council member, generally speaking, I think it would be courtesy to another council member who wishes to make a comment, brief, on the topic, but that's at the discretion of the chair and the decision of the body. So there's been a request to have a report brought back. It's been seconded, and there's now a request from the mayor pro tem to at least make a comment on it, which
I'd
seems
like
to
a
me
brief
to be
brief
appropriate.
comment. I would just like to say that I am in opposition to bringing the cannabis industry to the city. Marijuana for recreational purposes was legalized in 2016, and I was part of the LA County Cannabis Advisory Committee. At that time, it was promised that a large percentage was going to come to the field of education of the revenue that came from the sales taxes from California's cannabis industry. And you know how much money has come to, I work for the County Office of Education. In the past 5 years, do you know how much money has come to public California education schools? What would you guess, Mayor?
As I understand it.
$0, zero
Your
dollars.
request was.
Mayor, I think now we're starting to go afield
Yes,
from what the
so
intent of the
my
Brown
point
Act
being
is.
is that I think it's irresponsible to bring the cannabis industry to our city on the hopes and promises of unfounded revenue. And I think we have other fish to fry, larger fish to fry, so to speak, including our water infrastructure.
Mayor, with that, I
a
think it's
just a
appropriate to
brief
go on to the
rebuttal.
next item.
No, just a brief rebuttal to that. I can't defend or argue for the dysfunctionality of another governing body, because that's what's happening. If they made promises, then they should have kept to them.
Do you think that we have a better
Secondly-
capacity than
secondly-
the state does?
All right. Okay.
Done. Moving on.
Again.
In regards to COVID, in regards to the Health Committee and COVID, I just want to report that Pico Rivera continues. We have a total of 11,079 confirmed cases. That really hasn't gone up much over the past few months. I think that's testament to the efficacy of the vaccines. The city of Pico Rivera has a 48% vaccination rate, which I think is pretty outstanding for our community. So I just want to give testament to the residents. And also, there's been no recent infections in our nursing homes. So I think that's very important. And with that, I'm done with my comments. Thank you.
Councilman Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make an announcement to the residents of Pico Rivera, which has already been announced on the social media sites, catalytic converter theft deterrent event. Now, this has already reached its capacity May 1st at the Sheriff's Department here in Pico Rivera by appointment only. I'll be working on seeing if we can do a secondary event because this is a great opportunity. It's an option to, as a deterrent, to have your catalytic converter from being stolen by adding that etching of your license plate number on it. So again, the city and the Sheriff's Department are working together, being proactive to help the local residents to prevent theft. And that is key, protecting our residents however we can. The other item I wanted to mention again, highlighting, Councilmember Camacho mentioned that we had our commissioners and city staff and some members of the community get together and talk about a dog park. Everybody's been talking about when will Pico Rivera get a dog park. I've been talking about it, and I'm sure a lot of people have suggested, when are we going to get one? Well, we're in the preliminary stages, and we've had discussions, and we discussed different locations, maybe possibly 2 separate locations, or 3, or maybe 1 big dog park. But again, this takes years in the making, and it was a fruitful discussion that we had yesterday on the dog park. item, and I would like to direct staff if we can get further analysis on all locations discussed and specific costs and other legal requirements that the city has to abide by should a dog park be brought to our community after the city reopens of COVID-19. I think that would be a great opportunity. And with that, that's it for me. Thank you.
If I may, I'd just like to second that request.
Oh, you're making a formal request?
And I will second the request to have staff look into the locations.
Okay.
and
Oh,
viability of
good.
that.
Okay. All right, mine is going to be a little bit long because yours was short. Okay. Mr. Carmona, it was my understanding that we agreed on an agenda structure that complied with Robert's Rules of Order, and I still don't see it.
Yeah, again, I'm going to defer to the city attorney to comment on our current agenda process and if that complies with Robert's Rule of Order.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm not quite sure why the agenda doesn't comply with Robert's rules. Let me note a couple things, council. Robert's rules, well, the Brown Act controls the agendas. Brown Act, the state law. Robert's rules is discretionary. We do have a set of rules of how agendas are to be handled. But Mayor, with all due respect, I'm not quite sure what specifically is it that this agenda is lacking.
Well, if you take a look at the structure of the Robert's Rules of Order agenda, what it allows is it allows for new business and old business. What I've seen in our agenda is that it doesn't provide us, the council, with the follow-through, okay, with the actions that we take. Because, again, it doesn't relate to old business and new business. If you check the agenda, okay, if you check the Robert's Rules of Agenda, it's clear. It's clear, okay? Now, the explanation that I received that we're doing the same because this is a traditional way of doing it, I'm not satisfied with that because I submitted a resolution, okay, that was requesting this, and we decided in a compromise that resolution wasn't necessary because we would do it. So all I'm doing is just asking that you keep your part of the bargain. Okay, my second item.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment this one?
No.
I would like to make a motion and to support that.
Okay, I didn't have the, yes, thank you.
So, again, for clarification, I know that we put it under the order, and in the past, in the agendas, we would have old business, no new business. Then Senator Archuleta now, when he was mayor, we combined it into one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that to your request, and I would agree, if we can just, if the issue is putting the old business, new business, and the others, we should make that correction.
Mr. Mayor, if we can do whatever the council wants. It's your agenda, not staff's agenda.
All right.
The good of the order on your agenda lists intergovernmental agency meetings, AB 1234 reports, which include any travel that the council does, which during this period is not taking place. Then it says new business and old business. Now, it's all kind of been mushed together, but if the council wishes us to break out old business, new business, that can certainly be, I'm not speaking for the city
That's what I'm
manager.
requesting, and I got a second.
Very well.
That can be, yeah.
Okay, all right, next. Let's see. Do we have a date on the repair of Rosemead?
Yes, you just got a briefing earlier, so we are definitely going to, I think, open the bids fairly soon.
Yes, the bid opening is on May 14, May 19, so in 2 weeks. And then we plan to award the construction the first meeting in June.
Can you repeat that loudly?
Okay. So we're opening bids on, sorry. Oh, I believe it's May 20th. And we are going to award the construction of the construction contract at the June 8th council meeting. provided the bids are good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Carmona, the Memorial Day ceremony, did you consult with any of the veterans organizations when you?
Yeah, I'm going to defer that to Park and Recs.
We didn't consult with them, but we reached out to them to let them know what we were doing, and they're in support of it. They're on board.
Okay, what I did was that I received some feedback that, that I think is warranted
Okay.
in terms of the drive-through or drive-by ceremony. This is not thanking them for their service. This is honoring the dead. So it seemed a little sacrosanct, to be, to do that. So what the veterans are asking for is that if they have an opportunity to sit with you and devise something that they think is going to be more sensitive and appropriate.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, certainly.
Sure,
We'll do that.
Okay?
absolutely.
All right.
Are we still okay to move forward with our event? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's already planned. We will definitely, if you have the list of folks that have reached out to you, we can definitely reach out to them.
Okay. And also, I was notified by the commander that they still haven't received names from council people on the 2 veterans assigned for the advisory board, because they thought that, with the advisory committee, this thing would have been able to be dealt with. So I'm looking at you, but okay. So actually, they'd like it by the end of this week, okay?
Mayor, if I may, I think that there's a distinction between you keep referring to the commander of, I believe, the VFW. The VFW and American Legion are their own entities, and the city are our own entities. So we can therefore form our own group of ad hoc or group of veterans. So we don't need to send representatives to the VFW.
No, we don't.
So-
They don't even have to be from the PW.
Exactly. So why would the names need to go to the commander?
Well, if you don't have any names, because he's an advisor on okay. You could submit them to me if you want to.
So that's the point, is would it be the staff, or I think we need to further flesh out who is going to be the lead, who are going to be the collectors of information, conveners of this.
Submit the names to whoever, we just need them by Friday. I'm going to need a second for this task, and it fits perfectly with, your capital improvements projects and so on. Council, could you please research and prepare a legally defensible local hire policy? There's a number of cities that are using it and developing it as part of their economic development policy, and I think that it would be a tremendous idea, and it fits also into the training aspect in there, where we do have a local hire policy. Can I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you. We also have a situation here where, Council, I'm going to ask that we pursue this in a closed session, maybe next meeting here. There are 2 contracts that I have not executed on that I need some clarification on. Okay, I need to see that they conform with the with the action of the agenda that we voted on. Now I found that there was a little bit of problem. It may be me. Okay, so what I'm doing is that I'm requesting that you provide a clarification on the 2 contracts. Because what I'm concerned about is what we approved, okay, what we approved as a council, I didn't see, okay? I only saw an aspect of it. I didn't see in those contracts. I need a clarification on that.
You can give me those 2 contracts offline if you wish, or? That's fine. We'll follow up, Mayor. Just need to know what you want us to follow up on.
All right. Also, the thing that's come up is we have a tremendous talent, okay? We have a tremendous talent in our Planning Commission and our Parks and Recreation Commission. Now, in looking at the reason that we established these commissions, they were established and created to advise the council, okay? Those are citizens that we appointed that are out there, that understand the situation and so on. But I haven't seen a mechanism that allows them to be able to advise us, on these issues, like the capital projects, okay, and other things that we're doing here. So what I would like to do is that I would like to see a process and a protocol where they begin functioning in the way that they were created for, to advise the council. Can I get a second?
Sure. Be happy to give you a second.
Let's see. If you're not aware, this is a historical event here. The El Rancho Unified School District Board is looking at the opportunity of working together. And what they would like to do is actually meet as a board, meet the council as a board and have a special meeting, a joint meeting, to discuss the opportunities that we may have, working together. Establishing team relationships, strategic alliances, and what. I think that, that it's important, but again, they want a formal, Brown Act meeting. So I know that we've already been talking about it. The agendas would be formulated by the superintendent and by the city manager, for these meetings. Now, I know we're in the process in here, so can you tell us what's going on right now?
Yes, Mayor, City Council. We actually have some dates that we've been floating around. It's really dependent upon each respective body's schedule. So I think there's some new dates that executive assistant had sent out. So as soon as we get the response on both sides, we can get those. We can get that meeting scheduled.
And it's a tremendous resource that's available. Mayor Pro Tem was talking about a survey. They actually have a platform that allows communications directly to their households where you can use various items to be able to, to conduct surveys and so on. So I'm really looking forward to this. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for us and a great photo op. And that's my term there.
Shall I announce closed session, Mayor?
Closed session.
Thank you.
Now
We do
in
have,
closed session, please.
we have two items for closed session, A and B, and we'll be recessing to closed session.